Hey guys, it's Taylor. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be doing the mid-year book Freakout tag. It is the middle of June right now as I'm filming this, so this is definitely smack dab in the middle of the year. I've read a lot of books. I've read about 62, I think, something like that. 62 books so far this year, so I thought this tag would be a great chance to kind of look back on some of the books that I have read this year already. The first prompt is the best book you've read in 2019 so far, and for that would be The Outsider by Stephen King. This book really took me by surprise. It stayed on my shelf for quite a while after I got it because I had kind of heard bad reviews about it. From a lot of people, I generally really enjoy the reviews, but I went ahead, ended up picking it up for some sort of readathon this year. I think it was the Bingo-a-thon readathon, and I ended up loving it. 5 out of 5 stars. This just really reminded me of why I love Stephen King so much in the first place, and he still got it. I know a lot of people say he don't got it anymore and he's just kind of publishing anything, but this book is awesome. This is one of the best Stephen King books. It's definitely on my top 10 now of Stephen King books, and it's definitely my favorite book that I've read this year so far. And I guess it would be useful to give a little synopsis of this one. This is about a small town who really is traumatized by the horrible murder of a small boy. The police force really believes that they know 100% who the killer is, so they arrest someone and they realize he has an airtight alibi, even though there is evidence that definitively puts him in 2 different places at one time. So this is dealing with doppelgangers, and it's like a true crime mystery with a splash of paranormal. The next prompt is best sequel that you read in 2019, and that would have to be The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. This is the second book in the His Dark Materials trilogy. I was looking to pick a new book for this one because this is definitely a reread for me. I have read these books many times before, and I'm rereading this series currently at the moment. This is my first time rereading this series as an adult, and I have a lot more respect for this book. When I was a kid, I thought this one was very dull in comparison. It's definitely shorter than the first and the third books in the trilogy, and I just kind of thought it was filler content for the good stuff to happen in the third book. And rereading this, there's so much that just went right over my head, and it's really the reason why I think, even though this is middle grade, that people of all ages can get a lot out of this, because while I did get so much out of this as a kid, there's just so many layers to this story that I am getting as an adult now. Definitely the best sequel. As a kid, if I had Goodreads, I would have probably given this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, because this is definitely, I thought, the weak point in the trilogy, but I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars because it's great. The world building is great. Some of the characters they introduce, great. So this was really surprising to me, and definitely deserved a mention for the best sequel that I've read. I can't give a lot about this because it is a sequel in a book, but if you enjoy high fantasy and conflicts between science and religion, good versus evil, is there really a good versus evil? Check the series out. It's amazing. The next prompt is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to, and that would be Recursion by Blake Crouch. I got this in this month's Book of the Month box. This one just looks like it has an excellent premise. I've really enjoyed Dark Matter by Blake Crouch in the past. And this says memory makes reality. It's a page turner and an intricate science fiction puzzle box about time, identity, and memory. So this looks really intriguing to me. This is tackling memory and how much memory impacts who we are as people and what would happen if we started losing those, I believe. I'm not sure, I haven't read it yet, but I'm definitely really looking forward to reading this book. The next prompt is most anticipated release for second half of the year, and that would be The Secret Commonwealth by Philip Pullman. I've mentioned this a couple of times on my channel before, but I am rereading the His Dark Materials series in preparation for the coming out of these new books in the Book of Dust trilogy. His Dark Materials was my favorite series as a kid. It's still one of my favorite series now as an adult, and I am really excited for this next installation. I actually did a whole video about my most anticipated releases of 2019, the second half of 2019, and that was on there. I'm just so excited to delve back into one of my favorite worlds again. The fifth prompt was the biggest disappointment you've read this year, and that would have to be Haunting at Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Please don't come after me. I know it's an unpopular opinion. I do not like this book. I watched the Haunting of Hill House TV show this year. Absolutely loved it. I'm considering it one of my favorite like movies because it's a limited TV show, so it's like I think just 8 episodes long. I love it. Loved it. Loved everything about it. It was wonderful. One of the best things I've watched in such a long time. I had read The Haunting of Hill House, let's see, in high school. So longer ago than I'd like to admit, but I really hated it and I almost did not finish it back then. I really didn't like it, didn't see the hype about it. You know, I love horror and I'd heard time and time again that's one of the landmark books in horror, and I hated it. So after watching the TV series and knowing that the two were nothing alike, but you know, I'm older now, maybe more mature, my reading tastes have maybe changed a little bit, I decided to reread Haunting of Hill House and still didn't like it. I listened to it via audiobook this time, hoping that might help make things clearer for me, and it's just really not the book for me. There are classic horror books that I really enjoy. This isn't one of them. It's not scary, it's kind of boring, I don't like the characters. Yeah, and I was just really hoping that I would like it more this time around, but I really didn't, so that's gotta be one of the worst books that I have read this year. The next prompt is the biggest surprise you've read this year, and that would have to be The Lesser Dead. This one really came as a surprise for me. I do work retail, and if you have worked retail, you might know what a floor set is. It's essentially a period of time where you come in after hours and redo like the sales floor. So, you know, like every season, how product changes and all of that. So for our floor sets, we do get to bring in our phones, listen to music, audiobooks, whatever we want to do. It's very casual. And so I definitely usually listen to podcasts or audiobooks. I was looking for an audiobook to get into, and I usually pick rereads or audio or like memoirs or audiobooks that I'm really not that invested in because I'm still doing work. I can't focus all of my energy onto listening to the audiobook. So I was looking through the horror audiobooks that were available on Libby, and this was one of them. I picked it up, started listening to it. Wow, like I have to purchase this book because I just absolutely loved it so much. It's the perfect vampire story. I love vampire stories, and I know they're pretty popular. I think they're getting a little bit of a comeback with Renee Audier's vampire book, and I think Jay Kristoff is coming out with one too, like next year, I think I saw it. So I love a good vampire book already, but this is about vampires in New York City in the 1970s, the late 70s or the early 80s, and it's just so grungy and dirty and exciting and sentimental, and I just loved it. The audiobook is fantastic. I'm sure reading it would be fantastic as well, but this was great. It was a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I finished it in the floor set, and I had to go sit down in the bathroom at the end of this while I was listening to it because it was a lot. The ending was, wow, the ending was a lot. So definitely was not expecting that. Really, really good. One of my favorite books that I have read in the past couple of months. The next prompt is favorite new author, whether it's a new author to the world or new author to you. And for that one, I am going with Michael Rutger. He wrote The Anomaly. This came out last year, and the sequel is actually coming out next month, I believe. But this just is an incredible book. It's Ghost Adventures meets The Da Vinci Code, meets, I think X-Files was one that this was blurbed as, meets Indiana Jones. It's awesome. Even though I picked him as my favorite newest author, I believe Michael Rutger is a pen name. So he's not a real guy, but he's my favorite new author because this was just such an enjoyable ride. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. This was just really well written. I can really see this becoming a awesome movie or a TV series. Like, that's how visceral the writing was. I really enjoyed it. The 8th prompt is your newest fictional crush. I'm gonna pass on this one slash like include it in the next prompt just because I don't really get this one. I don't really get crushes on like a lot of book characters. I'm very picky about that as well. Even if I like characters, I don't necessarily get crushes on them. And this year I've tended to read a lot of books with very unlikable characters, which I have been kind of like on a roll with recently. And while I like reading about unlikable characters, I definitely don't have crushes on any of them. So that's just not something, at least this point in the year, that I actually have. But the 9th prompt is your newest favorite character, and this one is kind of going to be a little bit of a cop-out because I can't explain anything about it. but it's a character in The Outsider. She appears midway through. If you've read this, you know who I'm talking about, but she's just such a relatable female character, and like a badass female character, but in a realistic way. Like she's not a stereotypical badass female character. She's definitely more meek. She suffers with anxiety, I think, and I think maybe mild OCD as well. Just some of the things she does, it's very relatable to someone who does have anxiety, but also she's just a great character that is a strong female character who's not your typical female badass stereotype. The 10th prompt is a book that made you cry, and I did not cry, but I did tear up during this one. I can't remember the last time I've cried at a book, so I definitely haven't cried at any this year so far, but the one that has made me tear up and made me get the most emotional was Alpha and Omega, and that was Lock and Key, issue 6. This just had one of the most satisfying endings of any book series or comic series or movie, like any sort of series that I've ever read. This is going to be adapted as, I think, a Netflix series, and I'm so excited to watch it. It just wraps up so beautifully. It's so touching. It's absolutely wonderful, and it is a horror comic, but there is so much humor. There's so much heart. You really get to love the characters, and so I think that's what makes the ending just perfect. It's very emotional. You really feel things along with the characters, so the ending of this one did really hit me pretty hard. Number 11 is a book that made you happy, and that was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I reread this one, I think 2 months ago now, and this is one of my favorite installations in the Harry Potter series. Chamber of Secrets and Goblet of Fire are my 2 favorites, and this one just it really hit me in all the feels because I love everything about it. I love the world building. I love kind of the Hogwarts lore that you get in there. The characters really come into their own. It's an amazing installation. I love it so much. And it just really reminded me of why I really love the Harry Potter series as well. I listened to it on audiobook and I was just beaming the whole time because it was just such a fun read to me. The 12th prompt is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year, and for me that would be The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This just is a gorgeous color. I love orange. It's one of my favorite colors already. There's a gorgeous dragon there. There's a beautiful dragon there. And then the spine as well. Wow. This book is incredible, and it's also a good read too. I'm only on like page 50 at the moment, but this is definitely the most gorgeous book I've bought this year. I'm a sucker for high fantasy, I'm a sucker for dragons, I'm a sucker for really great, feministy, good female characters fantasy, and this has been providing all of that so far, so I'm really excited to see if the insides are as beautiful as the outside. I'm sure it will be. And then the last prompt is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I did make a video, the one previous to this one, and I'll leave a link up below, and that was my most anticipated reads July through December, and that's all of those. I generally actually have most of my owned book collection I've actually read. I've been really good. I think there's only like 5 or 6 now that I haven't read, so definitely all of those, and then just all of my anticipated releases for the next half of this year. I can't think of any books that I haven't already mentioned that would make that list, so that is the last prompt for the tag. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!